Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming again. I ask that you please stand and join me. We'll have a moment of silence and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Get a roll call, please.
Brad Hinn.
Here.
Ken Snyder.
Here.
Steve Hamill.
Here.
Chantel Ostra.
Here.
Tom Eggers.
Here.
Did you hear that?
Uh-huh. We all did.
All right. We'll allow this opportunity for the public forum. Is there anyone that wants to address the council at this time? I'm seeing no movement, so we will move on then to starting with item 12 today. That's the public forum. Moving into item 13 then, requests from partner organizations. Do we have a representative from RIDES here today? No. How about the golf club? Larry?
Larry Smith from the Sheldon Golf and Country Club. Just want to thank you for your continued partnership in the past. We appreciate everything. As you know, in 2024, we had a little rough year with some weather. But for those of you that have been out and see what we did of a portion of improving our bridges or our infrastructure out there, I think over the last few years we've remodeled or updated the cart sheds out there. We've installed a couple new bridges, which are a huge asset to the facilities, and we're looking to expand that again this year, put up 2 more. So we are asking to partner with that to get some infrastructure updates. So, any questions?
No one? No questions? Any comments from you? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That was easy. Thanks, Larry. All right, Mid-Sioux opportunities. Is there somebody here from Mid-Sioux today? Children's World, we've kind of discussed before. Bryan County Economic Development. NCC, I do see somebody here from NCC today. Not? NCC? Oh, okay. That was. Upper Des Moines Opportunity.
Hello, I'm Shakira Meyer from Upper Des Moines Opportunity. I'm the development director with the organization. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to partner with the City of Sheldon to make sure that those residents most in need have access to the assistance that they need. You were previously provided with information about the number of individuals that our organization has assisted here in the City of Sheldon. Those numbers continue to fluctuate year over year. Kind of depends on where families are at. The big programs that our organization provides is heating assistance through the LIHEAP program, but then we also cover crisis situations when individuals, their furnace dies or some other utility instance happens outside of that LIHEAP moratorium period. The food assistance program is another big one that we support and make sure that individuals facing food insecurity have access to healthy, nutritious foods. Number of other programs that we provide as well, including here in Sheldon, we do have a Head Start classroom where we continue to serve low-income children and provide a full day of educational opportunities that wraps around that child, so those parents can work the full day and that child is in a structured program. Our request was $3,300, and you've got in your report that during this last fiscal year, Upper Des Moines was able to contribute back over $90,000 into the community of Sheldon to assist the residents here in the community. But across O'Brien County, I know that is beyond your borders here, but we provided over $300,000 of assistance to the residents in O'Brien County. So if you have any additional questions, any questions at all, I'd entertain those. I do have a couple reports that I'll leave with you. We do a community needs assessment every 3 years as part of our standards through the Community Service Block Grant, but then we also issue an annual report each year. I'll just leave it one copy with you so that if there's more information you'd like to know about our organization, you can find it there, but those reports are also available on our website annually.
All right, any questions for Julie? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. All right. And then what about family crisis centers?
Hi.
Jessica?
No,
Oh.
actually, I am Tara Raymond. I'm the Director of Marketing and Development for
Okay.
Family Crisis Center. So I just want to start by thanking the City of Sheldon for their partnership last year in supporting our mission. Just kind of a refresher what we do for the residents of Sheldon. We provide safety, healing, and support for survivors of domestic violence. This could be safety planning, help filing protection orders, meeting someone at the hospital if their situation escalates, just any ongoing support that they need to gain that safety and maintain that safety and live a life free from violence. One of the biggest things we helped Sheldon residents with last year was housing, helping people get safe housing. We help them find, obtain, and maintain that safe housing, and that often includes rental and utility support when needed. We also provide criminal justice support for victims of any violent crime you can think of, so homicide, burglary, arson, robbery, really just walking with people from the moment that crime happens till well after a trial concludes. And you would probably be surprised at how often these things happen in small rural towns. And we also provide safe spaces for supervised visitation and exchanges, just ensuring that families have that safety to meet with their children. We have a 24-hour hotline that we can talk to anyone at any hour of the day, really about anything that's affecting their life. Something that's really good for this, the City of Sheldon, is that we have an office here at the Fusion Workspace, and so we have 2 advocates that will work out of that office quite regularly in a week, and so that really just helps make our services very accessible. We're committed to responding to any crisis within 1 hour or less, and our services are completely free and confidential for any Sheldon resident who needs it. We stated in our letter to you that in our last fiscal year we provided almost $55,000 in services, and so we're respectfully requesting an appropriation of about $5,000 just to help continue that support. Any questions?
The $55,000 was just in Sheldon to Sheldon residents, correct?
Just Sheldon.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Kara.
Thank you.
That's the end of my list unless I'm missing somebody. I don't think so. All right. We will discuss this further down in the recap there, as far as the asks and what we want to give. So let's move on then to our local ops and sales tax item 14 on the agenda. Do you want to kick that off, Sam?
Do you want to take a crack at this?
No? Okay.
right. Just a moment here. All right, so if you want to look at the memo that I linked there, I'll just hit some of the highlights. Property tax increases over the last several years have been large. I mentioned that yesterday. Today I linked the history of ICAP, which is our Iowa Community Assurance Pool, and Perspective is our agent. I linked that further up in the agenda under insurance 7D, so you can see how much it's gone up. It's gone up from the low 100s in 2020, 21 to over 400 in the next, estimated in the next fiscal year. So that's really had an impact on local option sales tax. So 10% to emergency services set aside. This is in addition to the $183,000 and change for fire and capital items down below. I have a misplaced bullet point where I say 2017 GO note has fallen off and is paid in its place is $256,000 for Western Avenue. That should have been under TIF. My apologies. Request for partner organizations, that's at the bottom of the list. Mid-Sioux and Golf Course are both requesting an increase. Upper Des Moines and Family Crisis requesting the same. Any questions on Lost? You can always circle back under recap, so I'll just keep moving along. TIF, we have a 4% increase. Storefront, no increase. Rides, we need to discuss that. We have an issue that we're working through. I was reading through the contract, and the contract states that the hours of operation for rides shall be 6:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday, and Saturday from 7 to noon. And their website today, when I looked at it, was 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, no operations on Saturday. So it's an issue that we need to work through, so I've got to call into the village to discuss with them further. They're doing some research. I think we have to keep in mind that the amount of money that we are giving rides is significant, and this is an urban renewal agreement, so there's some compliance things that need to be addressed. So I think we should keep them in the budget for now, but before we'll have to work through that as we work through, over the next little bit, and I'll circle back with you on that. But I guess it's more than, we're doing this mainly for the village, but it also helps other people, and the hours of rides are such, I don't even know how somebody would be able to work a full shift. So that really concerns me. So,
is that something that's changed from years past?
Well, I'm not sure exactly when it changed, but
Okay.
The contract is clear, and it's been the same contract for the last several years. And in fact, I think they were running longer than the hours that are in the current agreement of 6:30 to 5:30 and Saturday mornings. So I think that's something that we're going to have to sort out. So Children's World, this is important. We'll spend just a few minutes on this, or more if you'd like. 4% increase for their operational grant for the next 2 fiscal years. It'd be a new agreement. Plus there would be a potential 1-year pilot program for this next fiscal year. That would be the equivalent of, there's a separate memo under that item of $2,080 per 28 spots for infants, roughly $58,000. So that's a significant investment, but appears to be worthwhile, and that's something we've discussed a little bit before. Consultant professional fees, explanation speaks for itself. Todd touched on the water slide yesterday. Trees, reduced need. Cemetery was talked about yesterday. Pavilion, I should take just a moment to explain this. They had asked for $63,000 in loss for the current fiscal year, and that was moved to the middle of the year to see where things sat. In the meantime, the urban renewal plan had been updated, and this is now an eligible expense from TIF. Patricia, I believe that you've decided, or your team has decided, not to do the wall right now and focus on the shed.
Correct.
And you're willing to, you believe that the cost will be north of 100,000?
150
is what you said. So it would be 100,000 is what TIF could put in, and the rest could come from your fund. We talked about that. You're still okay with that? Okay. Land purchases, I think I hit on that a little bit yesterday. I did add some more information to the land update section under item 10B. You want to take a look at that? I've now got, I now have maps linked for a few other areas that were asked about yesterday, including the south end of the Floyd. The Quick Start neighborhood remains in the urban renewal area, but the increment has been released, which adds at least $150,000 in raw tax dollars back to the other taxing entities and to the taxpayers. Any questions on lost or TIF? And then we have the TIF stormwater memo that I linked so you could get a better feel for what is allowable to be spent out of TIF for stormwater. It's significant. 810,000. Todd, is that what it is in the coming fiscal year?
Yeah, that's the estimate.
From TIF. Okay. All right. Hotel motel tax, I linked that information. It was discussed yesterday in the marketing committee of also earning some interest on the funds, SCDC earning interest on the hotel motel tax fund, so that was discussed in the recent meeting. So the rest of this speaks for itself. Any questions on that? Okay, it's all yours.
Okay. So, we are ready to move into 15 then, the recap?
Yeah. Good.
All right, unless somebody has something else, we're going to move on then to item 15, the recap. The first item there is approval of the city clerk's proposed changes for her presentation yesterday. Can you refresh us again what those changes were?
Sure, it'd be $34,000 for the EMA vehicle outfitting from Lost, $12,600 for the museum property taxes from Lost,
How much? 30?
$12,600, and $75,000 from Lost for the library property taxes.
Is that revenue from property taxes or property taxes to be paid?
So it's revenue. So the general fund is the only one that collects property taxes.
Yep.
And then we take the library, museum, and park and subtract out what they request for property taxes from the general fund property taxes. So this would put, if the money came from Lost as opposed to taking it from our general property taxes, it'll actually create more revenue in the general fund for property taxes.
But if it's, coming from property taxes, why are we taking it out of lost? Because we already collected the money from the property taxes, so we should have that money in the general for the library. So where's that money going in the general if we're replacing it from lost?
So we receive the money, and it goes into the general fund for property taxes. But then when they're ready to have their allotment of property taxes, it comes from that money we've received in the general fund and goes into their fund.
Okay, I follow that, but why are we taking money from lost to pay
Help
for
with the
that?
general fund balance. Because we felt that museum and library could be community betterment.
Okay.
So, Sam or Angie, maybe to help the council on this a little bit, maybe we need to review that balance sheet a little bit and remind them what the general fund balance was going to be and why we started making some of these moves.
That might be helpful.
Because to me, it sounds like we're just transferring money
Brad, you pretty much either have to make these transfers or you have to go back to general fund and start making some cuts somewhere. So it's a way to avoid some cuts.
I understand the
Yeah.
process, but to the John Q. public,
Right.
they're saying
Right.
you're shuffling money around, which we are.
We 100% are. We do every year.
Yeah.
So the way it stands without any changes, the general fund cash and revenue or cash and investments at the end of 2026 would be $169,000, which is not very much money for a general fund.
Which is 6% of the recommended 17.
So in a roundabout way, does this keep us from having to raise levy or our tax?
We can't raise the general property tax at
We
that
can't
max.
raise it,
We cannot. And it's actually going to go lower next year.
so we have to supplement.
We do, and the state is capping us at 2% growth.
So is this something that we have to look at even in more detail long-term? As,
Probably. Sam, you agree?
Yeah, especially when as backfill goes away.
maybe it'd be a good idea over this next fiscal year to put together some kind of a plan that is explainable and understandable as far as how we're going to make up those losses of funds.
I think the state needs to worry about running the state, and the state needs to let the local government run local governments, because how do you expect us, when you can only raise it 2%, to keep up with inflation?
Right.
And raises, and everything else that goes up, property taxes, health insurance.
And then cut on the other side of it.
Yeah, I just think the state needs to worry about Des Moines, and let Sheldon worry about Sheldon, and the other cities worry about the other cities. But
You're right, Brad, because we're, in a lot of ways, if you think of it this way, we're being penalized for growth. Because they're capping us on what we can collect out of that growth, but when you have growth, that growth requires services, and those
Yep.
services cost money.
what they are doing is they are killing growth in the state of Iowa.
Right.
That's been a regular topic of conversation with these Northwest Iowa League meetings and such. When the legislators are in the room, that comes up. And I think our local legislators from this area get it and are communicating it. I got the impression from the last time meeting we had that it was starting to maybe gain some traction. Pete, you were there too. What do you think?
I hope so. Hope it wasn't just talk. We'll see.
Well, yeah, but it was the most positive response I've heard in the meetings I've been at, and it's been a topic of discussion. But, yeah.
Talk's cheap.
It is. But we'll
Especially
see.
politicians.
But I guess I would encourage you, if you get the opportunity to visit with our state legislators, hit them on that point, give them that same message. They need to hear it again and again. The more they hear it, more people they hear it from, the more likely it is something will be done. Who knows? I got a letter, email from the NFIB asking me to contact my legislature to lower, have the state lower property taxes, go in the other direction. So that was just today.
And to clarify, my suggestion as far as coming with a plan, I know it is not easy, and it may not be that we can have a fixed plan when we have to adjust year to year as well. So I understand that as well. So I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody here, but there is truth to what Brad says too, is that it gets complicated for the citizen to understand why we're moving monies around and whatnot. So I think what we're doing is fine. Don't get me wrong there either. I think that's exactly what we need to do. So that's it.
If I might.
Yes.
So Angie, we should also talk about the $140,000 that the general fund owes the fire department. That's mentioned in my memo, but we were talking about taking that out of lost over the next couple of years as well. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. I think you might as well talk a little bit about this now because this is such an important topic, but the mayor compliments us as staff for pulling rabbits out of hats, and we seem to do that every year, but it's getting more and more difficult to do that with the funding being what it is and the tremendous loss that we're seeing with the combination of levy consolidations and the loss of backfill. You now have the pavilion asking for another full-time employee, which they need, and that's something that we can probably swing, but our current funding process isn't sustainable unless things change, unless we add more money to the equation or cut services. It's just that simple. It's just that simple, and there's only so much. Brad and I have already leveraged the townships to the almost right. We're at basically the full extent for the townships. We have, ICAP still has the best insurance around. If we switch to EMC, which is what the school district has, but the school district has what, $25,000 or $50,000 deductibles per building, and their insurance is probably more than ours. It's really something what's happening. So anyway, I'm still very optimistic. It makes it harder to grow when we have these constraints built in the formula. There are ways to add more revenue, and that's been discussed before, but that would have to be decided on by the council if that's a path that you want to pursue. Well, it'd be a franchise and a franchise fee. So
you talk about that franchise fee. Earlier, yesterday, we talked about a stormwater charge would be another tax. So if we can do that, instead of going through the Mid-America thing, and you know how well that's going to go, I personally believe, let's just do one on our own services. You want to generate revenue just like you do with the stormwater, we're proposing to do. Let's do one for emergency services on our own services. Because I don't know who you're going to get to fight for the franchise fee.
Can we do that?
We can do it stormwater. I would assume we could do it for emergency services.
you mean an emergency services tap fee on?
I'm just throwing out there as an idea.
No.
Because I think the Mid-America thing is going to be
What are you headed to,
a
though?
battle to our water and sewer charges. Or add like we were doing, supposedly doing with the stormwater charge.
I can see the stormwater because it's related to water and sewer. I mean, it's a function of that department.
Emergency services is a city entity.
Right.
So by code, you have to provide law enforcement and fire protection. The city has to provide those.
Is that a
It's something to think about.
possibility?
We would need to check some legality.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could do it through the Mid-America franchise thing. I would think you could do it through,
One quick difference I can tell you is those are utilities. Fire, police aren't a utility, but they're a service we have to provide. So
Yep.
the question would be is, what do the lawyers say about that?
but
I know where you're coming from, I don't disagree.
you're charging a fee from Mid-America that's gonna go to those entities. Why can't the city of Sheldon do it? We're in the utility business like Mid-America is. And then it's right in-house.
I like the concept, I just don't.
Because,
I think we're gonna run into a
It's worth
brick wall.
investigating.
yeah, because I think the Mid-America thing, we've done it twice now, and it's been brutal.
A lot of baggage there.
Yep.
And I think that if you're going to pursue a franchise, it would have to be as part of the overall vision that was discussed with, in the recent workshops. If we hire a consultant to review what's needed for emergency services and build up to whatever is needed. But when we build new buildings, there has to be a way to operate them, and the general fund is strained. And I think it's important that we talk about, also accentuate the positive, and the positive is, and a lot of people miss this, is if you look at the budget form last year, the property tax intake decreased by 15.01%. That's real. Of course, everybody's taxes still went up, but that was because, that we had the bond for the school, which I supported, but it was our way of helping to support the schools. We helped decrease our intake. So the state did some of that for us, with some of the money that we were taking in with interest, and some of the other things that we've done helped us as well. But over the next couple of years, and Nicole, you had asked me a few months ago for a full-time employee. You've said you need one really bad. It's not in your budget. Eric, Chief, would like a new police officer in another year. And we have Tricia, who would like a full-time employee now. That's
I don't know how you're
tall
gonna
order.
sustain everybody wants employees with the general fund the way you're talking is. There's no way we can afford employees anymore, adding to what we got. Let's just cut to the chase. We can't handle it. I don't think we can take on another employee. Because then next year, you're gonna have the library, the police department. Can we add, every employee is $100,000 by the time you get the benefits and everything.
My fear is we lose employees if we don't add employees.
Yeah. Either that or cut back on services.
We have to figure out how to gain the funds, is what
Yeah.
we have to figure it out. And we can talk about the franchise fee, but there's nothing at this point that would support a full discussion on that at this time, in my opinion. So let's not spin our wheels tonight on that issue.
Tom, I only brought it up because I was asked what the funding source was. I hate bringing up that word here because it's the F word and it frustrates people.
Right.
And it's,
I'm just saying is that if we're gonna, we need to know what our true options are and discuss them when we know what they are. Let's not, let's not try to do it tonight.
think in a sense Todd, Angie, and Sam have spent the last several days and weeks trying to put together a budget that works. And using the transfers of lost funds and whatnot to make it happen. And like Sam said, they're running out of rabbits to pull out of the hat. Other than Brad's idea of, assessing that fee, a charge to water and sewer, what else is there? I mean, these guys have been working on that, and they're out of, there's not a lot available. They don't have a lot of avenues to go down.
Your main avenue, Mayor, is as the situation continues to progress. If it gets worse, then you're back to doing general obligation bonding for equipment.
Right.
And you can do that, and we just had $300,000 fall off in an annual payment, and we could theoretically do that now and keep that payment going, or wait, but that doesn't need a lot of analysis. That's something that a lot of communities already do.
But there's not 300,000 or whatever in the general budget of equipment in this budget, is there? Most of the equipment for like Todd and that is out of the operation funds of their departments, correct?
Yeah, my purchases this year are from like water, wastewater, but we have some future expenditures that would qualify for an essential corporate if we didn't want to do one in this fiscal year, but to
Yeah, down the road.
Or with some of the other stuff, like we did in the past.
Yeah,
We did one about 10 years ago.
yeah.
But just to be clear, doing a GO for, say, fire and police things is not gonna help the general fund because we transfer the money from lost into the general fund to cover the cost of those.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
not
where
money
I'm-
that's just coming from the general fund.
Well, it would in the sense that, I see what you're saying, but it would also help in the sense that if you paid for those expenses out of a GO rather than out of lost, then you could free up more money in lost, and then you could have more library expenses coming, for example, coming out of lost, and then reduce pressure on the general fund. But then you have, like you and I have talked about, lost as time goes on with everything that's happening ends up looking a little bit more like general fund too. And that's not something we want either. We want it to be community betterment. So that's why we try to not have wages per se coming out of lost.
And I see the GO as a one-time, a one-year fix, because the next year you're going to have the same recurring things coming out of lost, and now you're going to add more to that pot to come out of it.
Yeah, and then what you can do is you can take more TIF and pay down your TIF notes to reduce your debt capacity and do more GO, general obligation, but that increases property taxes because you can't use TIF for fire trucks and police cars. But all of these things are interconnected too. So.
And I'm assuming we're talking that this would be options that we would hammer through before the next budget. Right?
I didn't hear that, Tom.
I didn't either.
I said that what we're talking about here can be worked out during the year for the next budget, not this budget. This budget, as it's presented, is a budget that we can fund. So everything we're talking about is for the next budget. So we can look into whether we can have a fee for services. We can look at all the other things that were just brought up here in regards to how to do that. But for the purposes of tonight, we're here to look at the budget that's being presented. I don't want to look at next year's budget. tonight. I want to look at the budget being presented tonight for next year, for the next fiscal.
That's true, Tom, but you also have to think of the general fund moving forward for next year. If you keep adding to that fund, next year you're still going to have an issue in the year down the road.
I don't deny that, but there's nothing on the table for that tonight.
I understand, but
So are we going to be able to hammer through that tonight and get that all worked out and put it in this budget? That's my point. We're not. So, all good discussion, all needed discussion, but for the sake of the budget that's being presented for us tonight, I don't think we're prepared for that.
so the
Just my opinion.
budget tonight prepared does not have new staff in it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I guess there's our answer.
Well, so the question is that if we do approve additional funds, how are we going to pay for that? So let's talk about that.
Well, that kind of rolls into what we're going to be discussing as far as the request for the new employee at Crossroads, correct? So let's,
Probably. I don't
I mean,
mean to
that's
jump
where it's
ahead.
leading, so let's take care of the item, the first item, the proposed changes from Ange that she just presented.
I make a motion to approve Angie's request
Okay.
for changes.
Is there support for that?
Wouldn't that all be tied into the general budget at the end? Do we have motions on the budget as we go? I don't ever recall.
I think we have on the special request for loss.
I know we have
before,
special requests we have, but
And this
Okay.
would,
I think you could just do consensus, don't you, Sam?
Yeah.
okay. Do we have consensus on that then, if we don't take it as a motion? You want to withdraw your motion, so,
I'll withdraw. and
okay.
I'll-
We're going to do it by consensus. Do
I
we have
approve.
consensus?
On what?
On the approval of the clerk's proposed changes, that first item under 15.
Taking the museum, the library, and the EMA out of loss instead of general fund.
Oh,
And making payments to the
Yeah.
fire department.
Do you have a comment, Todd?
no, I'm good.
So I saw a head shaking yes over here.
yeah. Do you want to, Sam keeps talking about the 140,000 for the fire department. Do we want to clarify what that money is from?
Yeah, it's money that the general fund owes the fire capital fund per that resolution that passed several years ago, where there's a certain percentage that that
From
goes
the townships?
right from.
Yep.
Well, there's also but what was happening, Brad, was all the fire fee money that was staying in the general fund and
Yes,
not
not to the
going.
capital.
Yeah. So the consensus on that going forward with you and Angie and I was to have it be 60-40 going forward, 60 to fire capital and 40 to the general
I
fund.
believe we talked on the township side of it. The fees would go in, whatever the fees are.
100%.
Yes, and the townships is a 60-40.
Would the expenses then
The expenses
still
come
come
out
out
of
of the
that.
general? Oh, they would
Come out of the
that.
fees. So if we charge somebody $3,000 and they have $1,000 expense, that expense comes out of that, and then the $2,000 would go into the capital.
Well, that works, as long as the expense isn't
Yes.
coming out of the general fund. And
Yep, because we have a separate line item for those expenses.
Okay.
So is that item included in her proposed changes that we're giving consensus?
It is,
to?
we just need to catch up over the course of a couple of years, and then,
Okay.
and then going forward, Angie has the formula set up, so the money will just sweep into that, and it won't accrue in the general fund anymore as much.
Okay. So adding in that item we just discussed, do we still have consensus on approving those changes, those proposed changes?
Jake, not
I don't hear any alternatives, so yes.
Okay.
I mean,
say we have consensus. Everybody's
Right.
shaking their head a little bit. Okay. Very good. Now, let's move on then to this request for a new full-time employee at Crossroads. Tricia's made her case and makes a good one, but there's more that enters into that equation, as we've been discussing this in this last 10 minutes.
So I'll go back to my question, how are we going to fund it? What are our options?
So, sorry, I didn't know you were looking at me.
I didn't, I wonder if you were preparing for an answer. That's
Sorry. The pavilion operations could afford the wage. And the employee benefits levy could handle it this next year without the levy going up. Due to the fact that we budget for family insurance on maybe employees that don't take family insurance, due to the fact that, God forbid, they leave and we hire someone with family and we've only budgeted for single, something like that. So in this current, or this upcoming fiscal year, the employee benefits levy could handle one more employee without the levy going up, to make it easy to understand.
Thanks, Angie.
Yeah, and Ange, do you want to touch on what the estimated revenue and what the estimated expenditure of the pavilion are? Since you separated them out this year, we actually know exactly what that is. I've got it here. You don't
Oh, I've
look
got
it
it.
up, but
Next year's revenue is $487,500. Their expenses are $414,997.
Sorry, can you say those over?
Oh, I'm sorry. $487,500 in revenue. And just say $415,000 in expenses.
not including employee benefits. That's just,
Correct.
which, because that's levied.
Which we levy for all
Lots
general
of-
fund employees that way. Yes.
Correct.
Which brings you to a break-even proposition with a tremendous benefit for the community because of all of the local option sales tax being brought in. So
And hot
that-
tax.
yes, so a great point.
Hot tax.
Hotel, motel tax, I'm sorry.
I knew what that was.
All right, good job, all right.
So that's exciting. But we also don't want to be too exuberant and end up with accidentally promising that the pavilion is going to stay in the black, because it's ultimately a community center and most don't.
Also, you need to understand those are estimates, right? Those aren't actuals. Those are estimates.
Right.
Yep.
But
There's the potential then of additional income if there's additional events as well, so.
that's the
Having
point I was going to
another-
make. If they become more efficient and, what was the other E word you said? Yes, efficient and something else. That could be, I mean, there is that potential that revenue would go up, not proportionally to the necessarily, but could go, I would expect it to go up with the addition of another employee because of
Well,
added service.
here again, it gives another year for that board to look at what the next year would look like, continuation, so.
But still in that budget, you still haven't put anything away for capital equipment stuff.
Right.
Large item expenses.
Which we didn't do this last budget either,
No.
so.
I mean, yeah.
Mitch, can I ask, how much do you think from the hotel motel tax will go into our capital fund based on next year? Because a portion I know goes to general, a portion goes to our capital.
21,600.
You might want to repeat that question for the tape, 'cause I know there's people watching tonight.
The question was how much hotel motel tax is going into The pavilion account?
The pavilion capital,
The pavilion capital account.
21,600.
And the answer was, yeah, I heard you.
Yep.
Oh.
So what they're saying is we'll have more activities which will bring more income. Those activities will bring more people into town, staying at motel, eating at restaurants, whatever.
That's what they're saying, yes.
Plus cutting some overtime, which is,
It's only $4,000.
yeah, which is peanuts in the
Peanuts.
fund, but still, when you
Which-
start adding all that up, plus the services that more, better services, more activity is always good.
I guess I'd state that I give my consent to that request and for approval of a additional full-time employee for Crossroads Pavilion.
Are there others in agreement with Tom?
I didn't hear a word he said.
He would give his consent to adding the employee for Crossroads, the additional employee.
I would be
Writing
in
that into the
agreement
budget.
with that in this case.
You would,
Yeah, but,
okay?
do we have a price of what the salary would be? I mean, is that brought up at this point?
Generally about $100,000 benefits.
That'll be,
Depending on the position,
Ballpark.
75 to 100,000.
okay.
More like 75, we prefer.
It is. What she proposed, it would be $76,268.
Including the benefits.
Correct.
I have a hard time supporting it. We have, the library wants full-time people. The police department's gonna end up wanting another full-time person. And I believe the police department deserves a full-time person if we knew half the stuff that goes on. I don't think we really want an officer out overnight by himself, as least amount of time as possible. And our general fund, we can hardly make things work. So why keep adding to it when you can't sustain it down the road? With what's happening with the state, 2%, when our insurance is gonna go up 10%, and other employee benefits, raises and that. So, I'm against another employee. I know everybody needs more employees, so, I'm gonna say it.
I'd like to know where the rest of you stand.
I guess I would be supportive of it with the idea that it gives them a chance to prove that they can afford that.
Okay.
Because they are a revenue-generating entity.
Okay? So it's a conditional?
So you're saying a trial?
A year from now, it could go
Well,
away?
we'll deal with it in the next budget cycle. We'll know where we stand.
I've been wondering about that too. It's try it for a year, and if it doesn't work,
But
it's
how
hard to
you
go
gonna get rid of-
backwards, but.
How you gonna get rid of an employee
I
in a
know,
year?
exactly.
I have a question for Tricia.
Okay, go ahead. Tricia, maybe you should
Tricia,
come
I have a
forward.
question for you, and while you're walking up, I'll give you a chance to think about it. So my question's gonna be about overtime. Overtime. So with the rule that came out, the Fair Labor Standards Act rule on paying overtime, last year, we're paying Brooke overtime. And then the rule was overturned by a higher level court, and we continued to do it. And we're planning to do it at least through the end of the fiscal year. Is it the plan to have overtime for this position
No.
and Brooke's position, or
No.
to end overtime?
So the preference is to have salary.
Okay.
And there is not a threshold, a minimum threshold, or there is a minimum threshold?
It's back down to the mid-30s like it was before.
Correct. So that's right where we would be, and I would preferably salary so that we're not, preferably salary so we don't have the overtime, but then also we don't account for time that's worked when we're not at the facility, like when the phones go off at home with text messages and emails. So no overtime, and preferably salary. Sorry, I'm not tall. There. Does that help?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay.
They can't hear me either.
I know, we gotta speak up.
All right. We heard
Anything
that.
else?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, where you stand on this?
He said yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Jeff, still
Yes,
yes?
that's
Okay.
right, because of, I like the way she said it, revenue generated, somebody said that, so.
I know where you stand, I think.
Yep.
So, we don't have full consensus, but I think we do have a supermajority. So, I think we move forward.
I think it's important because we have our assistant manager of the pavilion here. I think it's important too that I clarify for her that it's my intent to make a recommendation to you that her wage accommodate the, at least some of the overtime that she'd been getting. Because otherwise we're going to be taking a step backwards, and I think we'll end up having an issue there. So that was the intent in the budget. And I didn't want you two to leave, since we're discussing this in a public setting, concerned about that issue. I'm also open to the whole concept of overtime, because there's benefits to that as well, in terms of retention and reduced need for staffing. Because at one point you were talking about wanting to hire two. I just don't want to be in a seesaw situation and be in a situation a few months down the road where we're being asked to consider a significant increase or overtime again. I think we need to kind of stick with one path or the other. So
that position won't have overtime, but we're gonna give her a pay increase to compensate for her overtime for that position. Is that what you were just saying, for the assistant manager?
That's not what I heard the other day from them.
So,
Trish is right.
so Sam says she's gonna cut overtime, but then we're gonna compensate her for that overtime.
Well, that's what I understood the conversation to be with from the other day.
That's the
For
way
the
it is
assistant. Currently, yeah.
Yes, so it's, the dollar amount is not gonna change at all, really. I mean, it's gonna be basically overtime.
Her base
Overtime pay
salary.
versus overtime pay, hourly pay plus overtime versus the salary is going to be,
So then a street person could say, I don't want the overtime, give me the difference in a pay increase, and not work any overtime.
Well, the difference is the street person, I shouldn't have said street person.
Just throw the union
street-
out.
The streets
So if he
department.
wasn't a union employee.
Yeah, the streets department employee, the difference is that they are an hourly employee. This was not an hourly employee that a federal rule required to pay overtime, but remains on salary.
Okay.
And then the higher level court overturned it, and so we could have gone immediately back to the way it was before, and I said, let's just ride out the fiscal year.
I didn't think
And so-
salary people could get overtime.
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Yeah, there was 4 employees in that situation.
We do have one employee that we will continue to pay overtime. So the wage that the assistant manager is currently making plus her overtime is actually less than the salary that they're proposing.
So her wage and overtime is less than they're
No,
proposing?
the wage that they're proposing would be less
Yeah,
than
but-
her salary plus overtime.
Good.
yes, please.
So, in your comment, Sam, that requesting two, we've only ever requested one part-time.
I know, we've talked.
Okay.
We've talked about
I just said,
how
that, Brooke,
busy you are.
did I ever
that-
say two? And 'cause
No, you didn't.
Okay, good.
We
We mentioned it a
we
little
talked
bit
about it.
yesterday. Got it,
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
our plan is to have, we would like, if it's
possible to have 3 full-time and then continue with our part-time, just for clarity. Okay.
All
Thank
I'm
you.
saying is I just wanted to either be on the overtime horse or not on the overtime horse. I just didn't want it to
Yep, no
come back
overtime
and
horse.
become a
Okay.
morale issue or whatever, and then have to revisit it. So I
Yep.
just
Okay, thank you.
wanted to
Just want to
clear
make
that
sure.
up.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. We're going to move on. I think we've got the consensus to move forward, so. Next item is the additional discussion on formation of the stormwater utility and fee. Have you put any effort into how that might work out since yesterday? Yes, the stormwater fee we talked about yesterday. Have you had any more thoughts on that?
Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to bring it back at a later date, but it seems like there's support for something greater. We have to bring it back at a later date, but it seems like there was consensus support for something greater than the $2 fee that was pitched in the memo. So I think what I need to put extended thought into yet is whether or not we are better off with a flat fee across, or whether it's some sort of prorated fee based on impervious surface. I did just a little thinking around today on different commercial buildings and even some residential properties and impervious surface, and that's going to be quite a web if I start trying to separate them. For simplicity purposes, I think right now I would lean towards a flat fee, but I need more than 24 hours to fish through that.
Could it be a tiered flat fee? Level 1, 2, and 3, based on square footage?
Potentially, and that's where the impervious surface comes
Yeah.
in, the same
Yeah.
thing.
So, I mean-
Square footage is maybe an easier number to get a hold of. But, yeah, because even when I got to thinking about the impervious surfaces with commercial, you run into issues too where, say, a downtown commercial business utilizes a community-owned parking lot versus a business further out, commercial business, has their own parking lot. So then, how do you calculate that, or how do you figure that? So that's why I'm leaning towards flat fee. And I guess based on what you said last night, I'd be leaning towards something closer to maybe $4 or $5.
I think for tonight's purposes, I think you need to know whether we're in favor of looking at it further, correct? And I think we mentioned that yesterday, so until you have something put together that we can really discuss, it's really we're not going to know budget-wise what the impact will be.
I tend to agree, because I don't, if we stair step it or base it on different sizes, not sure what that's going to do to the actual revenue production. That's hard to do unless you plug it into our software to figure out what each customer is actually going to end up paying.
Is there an advantage to doing this rather than just raising rates?
Well, sure, the advantage, well,
It's the same
depends
thing.
upon what you want the
Same
money
thing,
for, Pete.
isn't it?
No, it's not the same thing. It's not 100% not the same thing.
Okay.
If you set up a stormwater fee by ordinance,
Oh,
then
I see.
those fees go for stormwater purposes. They
Only.
don't transfer to the general fund, right? They don't, whatever.
Okay.
If you just set a fee without a purpose, then we can use it for whatever we want for. I think you'll gain more support if you set it for a specific item. At least that's the quick thought.
Will the Joe public look at it that way?
What?
Or will just the public look at, or just say, well, they're raising it again?
Who knows?
I mean, you need to explain, we need to really get it, the reasoning.
It will be Ken, it'll have to, whatever we do will have to be approved by ordinance. So it will be back in front of you a minimum of 3 more times. And knowing my boss the way I do, probably closer to 6.
Hey, take that back.
And you need to spell it out what that money is gonna get used for.
Period, yeah.
Yeah, which is where the stormwater fee would have an ordinance that says it's specifically for stormwater purposes. Wouldn't be listing out project by project, it would say stormwater purposes.
I mean, as you explained last night, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's an aging infrastructure, and we're borrowing from Peter to pay for Paul here. It's got to be done. It's just simple.
I like the way you think, Mayor. At least on this issue.
We're all friends.
Well, we would, going forward, we'd have a clear section on, you can identify stormwater projects in the CIP now, but we would have a section by itself for stormwater. We would have, on our fund balance sheet, you'd have the stormwater fund.
Correct.
And it would be sequestered funds.
Correct. Yep.
Just like road use tax.
Correct.
All right, I think everybody's in consensus on that one. All right, let's discuss a little more about the North Fifth Lift Station project. Anything you want to add at this point?
Nope, seems like I have support to go ahead and figure out exactly what we want to do and what it's going to cost and bring it back to you, and then we'll decide at that time whether we're paying cash or we're borrowing some money.
Yeah.
Right? You all think it makes sense? It would be irresponsible to not look.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And
Todd,
after, go ahead.
oh, sorry. So Todd, just to refresh, when you're saying pay cash, where's it coming from and how much would that cash or fund be able to support?
Yeah, so wastewater reserves
Right?
has, Angela's looking right now, but a little over $2 million in it.
Okay.
And that's the money that can be utilized. There's other wastewater reserves that are restricted to service debt, right? So I'm saying that if we, and by we, I mean my staff and I, make some adjustments to our capital improvement plan and hold back a couple of other projects, I believe we could pay cash, the full $700,000, anticipating we're gonna get something from FEMA mitigation, I just don't know what yet.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for reiterating that.
I was going to say, after listening to Scott yesterday and talking about bonding and our 45% debt capacity and how normal is, more, it sounds like a lot of them are in the 60 to 80%. I've always been one to believe the less debt, the better. But after hearing him, if I heard him right, debt for a city is not as bad as what it might be if you were as looking as a consumer or a resident in my own personal life. You know, the person that is, was that, did anybody else get that message from him yesterday?
So,
I think we could, I got the impression you could afford to borrow more.
Sam, help me with
Sounds
this, though.
crazy.
The debt that Scott was referencing is different than the debt that we're talking about here. Because this would not be debt that ends up in our debt capacity because it'd be rate-funded debt.
Well, it could be.
Oh, it could be, okay.
Yeah, because remember what he said is you could back it by general obligation, or
right.
back it by GO, and then you could take it, you could pay for it from the levy, or pay it from revenue. You'd probably pay it from revenue to keep property taxes lower, but it helps get you a better interest rate. So theoretically, going back to earlier discussion, you could do Scott said a $700,000 note is a little bit on the low side for public debt, but you do an even million. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just here's the concept.
Spend it.
You do a what's that?
I said I can spend it.
Yeah. Well, you do a $1 million note, and you do 700,000 for this, and 300,000 for we talked about a upcoming street sweeper, or you could do it for emergency services or whatever.
You can do a lining project. There's lots of things we do. But to Tom's point, let's get that far first.
Yeah.
You support the vision. We'll bring back more at a later date.
It's always easier to spend taxpayers' money. And he's in the business of borrowing money.
The positive is this. Our rate structures are working. The fact that we can sit here today and say, if you so choose to,
Yep.
we can pay cash, means that we're in a so much better position than we were even 10 years ago with those funds.
we're meeting the objective.
Correct. There was a day that wouldn't even been a thought.
No.
If you pay cash now, then find out. We can always do the bond later, or you have to do the bond up front?
You'd have to borrow for a different project, I think is what you're getting at. If something else came up and we spent the cash, you would just be guaranteed you'd have to borrow for the something else that came.
Now, what were those, you said you might have to sit some things back. How important are they?
As long as they continue to function, we're fine.
Well,
Yeah.
of course.
If the wheels fall off, then that's a different story. But we believe that we could push them back in time for the reserves to build up enough to fit. Or, worst case scenario, we come back to you later and say, we haven't built the reserves up quick enough, now we want to borrow X for this project.
Okay.
Or we have another 10-year flood.
Kick it down the road.
All right, next item is requests from the partner organizations, which go back to,
Yeah, if you would
Go
like
ahead.
me to take this one. So if you go up to item number 13 and you click on the Summary of Community Partner Requests, the PDF, under item 13, second attachment down. Highlighted in yellow are the changes. Golf course asked for 15 or 25 this year. They asked for 25 last year also and received 15 last year. So that's your first one.
Does it make any sense to give them an idea where the lost budget, the lost balances are before they
That does.
yes.
Yes, I would appreciate that.
The estimated balance at the,
60,000.
was 60,000 at the end of '26? So what I read on this sheet?
That was before you approved my stuff that we talked about earlier.
You're gonna have to dip into the 343,000 of reserves is what it means. Ange, weren't we gonna have a couple $100,000 left?
No, because
What?
we were, but I wasn't planning on doing the fire capital. So, you would be, just a minute here, sorry. I don't think. I think you're gonna need to take about 150,000 from investments to cover all the things that we approved before and all the requests.
And for one other final clarification, that still leaves close to 300,000 reserved for fire,
emergency
police,
services.
emergency service items as well.
Well, and the 35,000 for the EMA equipment could come from this year's 10% allocation.
Correct. So you'd only be having 70 go to the reserves, but it'd still be 275 for emergency services and around 150
Right.
for left in the lost.
And we can work out those numbers and bring it back to the February 5 recap.
We can, we
Plenty
just
of
hadn't
time.
mentioned the entire night about dipping
Right.
into reserves, and I
Yep.
thought it was important that the council understood that.
I think it's important as we get into the conversation of the community partners, the state auditor has very clear guidance. And the guidance is this, is it cannot be considered a donation. It needs to be thought of as a quid pro quo. You need to get a roughly equivalent value for the investment being made. So in the case of the golf course, we have a fairly clear agreement that identifies that it's helps us with youth programming, correct? It's mainly youth programming. So you would just have to justify it on that basis alone, since it is not in city limits, and so there aren't property tax considerations or local option sales tax considerations, other than when there's events out there, then people do shop in town, but that's not what the state auditor's looking for in this case. So.
I guess the question I have, in light of the reserves conversation just now and such, how do we, are we gonna cherry pick? I mean, the list to me is, if you do one, you do them all. And some may disagree, but how do you say no to one versus, they're all causes we've supported in the past. There's nothing new here. It's doing what we've done in the past, and
If I might.
so, I guess my question to you with the balance is, what, if we say yes to all, what's that going to do to our, I mean, can we afford to do it? That's probably the better way to ask the question.
Yes, you can. It would still, you would have to dip into the reserves, but it would leave close to $108,000 in reserves, plus the $300,000 that's in emergency services reserves.
Okay.
So, yes, you can.
Okay, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that there is one new item there, and that's the TIF expenditure for Children's World, the rate buy down. And that, by the way, did not come from Children's World. That idea came from Chantel and myself and Tanya. The three of us went to Children's World with that concept. So that's a little bit different.
That's true.
So I guess if we're going to do the $25,000 for the golf course, Larry, the additional $10,000 really needs to be justified as equipment fixes, because what we don't want to have is, speaking very frankly, is have the golf board say, well, we got 25 this year, let's find a way to get to 35 next year. The auditor's guidance is very clear that it needs to be tied to the youth programming, and that's how we were able to get to the 15,000. So that's how it has to be. That's how it really has to be structured. When I go stay in a motel, theoretically, I'm not having to pay an extra rate the following year as a furniture surcharge, right? So we just need to be careful with that. I think the 25 would be fine if the council wants to do that, but we just have to be cognizant of the only reason that we can do this and have it work is the tie to youth programming.
I have a question for you, Larry, if you don't mind. So last year you came to us asking for additional dollars for the bridges as well. We were able to maintain our fund as it had been the year before. You guys went ahead and expended for bridges, or a portion of them. Now you're asking again for bridges, another 10,000. Does that take care of the bridge project?
So there's 5 bridges out there. We've replaced 2, and we went out and got community support. A good share of that community support we asked for over a 3-year period. A good share of those gave that portion up front, okay, which helped us pay for those 2 bridges last year with the 15 that came from the funds here. So we don't have as much contributions from the community committed for this 2025. The goal was to replace 2 last year, 2 this year, and 1 the following. The cost on those 2 last year came, I want to say right, 78,000 to 80,000, right in that range. So we raised a significant amount of money. And anticipation, that's where we'll be again this year. A lot of concrete involved, a lot of steel, a lot of donations from Heartland Steel. To I've sent pictures, I think, I don't know if you've got those, but the old bridges are very tired. We've had cross-country meets out there, lots of participation in those. Using them as a crossing, watching that, I was really concerned. Still concerns me. In fact, the two that they're looking at replacing this summer, the fifth one that would be left is the one I'm most concerned about. We'll have to see. We may have to close it, and I think people travel a long ways around to get where they need to be, but if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. But safety is number one. We do get a lot of youth, a lot of high school youth, both Sheldon, Western, using both schools using that. We have youth programs in town here that use the course. Yeah, that answers your questions.
Well, my question is will the extra 10,000 finish the bridge project?
We need to raise some money, but that is, not completely. We'll be 4/5 done.
Okay.
Okay?
So if we gave the 10,000 to get 2 more bridges done, then next year, if we go back to 15,000 again, can you eke out the other bridge out of that?
I believe so.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I guess I have a question. If we dip out of reserves, how are we going to pay the reserves back?
Just have to start accumulating interest and not dip into them for a while to build them back up.
So then next year, we're going to have to cut something to replace the reserves.
Probably a good assumption, yes.
How do those reserves get accumulated now?
Interest that's generated.
Okay.
And we just held back, we just didn't,
We didn't dip into them in the past years.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's been a lot of years ago, but I remember a council budget session a lot of years ago where we said, we wanted to retain a couple $100,000 in there for what ifs throughout the year. I don't ever remember the council voting on a set X, but it's just always been a desire to withhold some.
All right.
Just look at, Todd, just a quick question.
Yeah.
For trees, 100,000. Is that what we need? Do we need to, should we extend that a year?
I'll know, or we'll know a lot more when the canopy comes back next spring.
Okay.
And I guess with that, Brad, could we slow down? Yeah. You just have to understand if we slow down, there's going to be some dead trees or some hazards to stay longer. So, but is it possible to adjust? Sure.
Okay. I just saying that, that 100,000.
Yep. We've spent about, this year, we've spent about 80,000 out of lost. Got 20,000 for the spring, up in the air yet, whether or not we're gonna spend that.
Gotta close your eyes, Todd.
Is that a direct order?
Sounds like it's gonna cost us a lot less money if you do, yeah.
I've got another team member that I'm gonna have to ask to close his eyes to then.
You mentioned it yesterday.
I know. It's just a reality.
All right, we need to get moving on this. I'm gonna take it one by one. Give me a nod or a thumbs up, something, rides, 25,000, yes or no?
I think that's dependent upon their operation hours.
Yes.
Okay.
The time.
If it meets agreement, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I'll bring that back.
Okay.
But we'll include it, we'll take this as your nod to include it at least in the
Subject
budget.
to
In the
hours.
budget. Yeah, but there has to be a new
That
agreement,
work for us,
so-
not for them.
Yeah, there needs to be a new agreement.
Okay. Country Club Golf, 25,000.
I agree for a 1 year only, to return to 15,000 next fiscal year after that.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Chantel?
I would agree.
Same. 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Bid Sue, $1,000.
Yep.
Yeah. Council on my left, yeah. To my right? Okay. Children's World, including the 1 year buy-down pilot program of 58,000.
I think it's important that we do that as a test and see how it goes, and maybe we can reach out to some other sources that would help fund that, other than the city, but I think it's important that we instigate it.
I would agree. My goal would be to have
I think that's,
community buy-in on it, but I feel it's important.
I think that's a win-win for everybody in the community, employers, employees.
Ken?
Now, are you saying that's the top we'll pay, if there's other contributors, that would be lower? Or that's what we're gonna pay?
That's what we're gonna pay.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
For 1 year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tom? Yeah, all right. O'Brien County Economic Development, 6,173.
Yes.
How's that
Oh,
contributed?
it'll be 66, 67.
No, yep.
Same
sorry,
as
wrong line.
same as last year.
Is that counted per capita?
Yeah, I believe it is. I think it raised last year, in the current fiscal year.
Yep, it went up from 6173 to about $500.
Where are you at with that one? To my left.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
To my
Done it
right.
before.
I would agree.
Okay. NCC Wellness Center,
That's in a 5-year agreement,
Yep, we
subject to
really-
annual appropriation, so.
can't say no to that one, I guess. And then Upper Des Moines Opportunity for 3,300.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
So, is it Shakira, right? Okay, so I know you didn't ask for additional money this year, but you did last year, the year before that. And I just want to make a comment, having worked with Mid-Sioux Opportunity, they do tremendous work. A very small part of Sheldon is in Sioux County, and I would say that you do at least 4 times more than what Mid-Sioux does. No offense to Mid-Sioux, but I would just propose, I know you didn't ask, but I would just propose we take yours up to an even 4,000. So you didn't ask for the additional 700, but I think that would be something you could consider. How much did you ask for last year or the year before? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you remember?
I don't know, maybe ask for us for 5,000?
I think you did. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you're in favor of that.
Oh, absolutely. And as noted, as noted in the report that we provided, Upper Des Moines provided over $90,000 back into the community. So any partnership that we get with the cities, with the counties, with local entities, we are returning vast amounts on that dollar back into the community, which helps make sure that your local utilities are paid. FCC does cover part of the area for housing services, but we do have tenant-based rental assistance that also covers O'Brien County. The state has lines for community action agencies and who has what counties, but then there's a whole housing consortium that has different lines, and it's kind of all over the place, and that's why you see, because you are on the county line, you do see Mid-Sioux covering part of Sheldon. But yeah, I mean, we aren't going to turn away those partnerships because it does allow us to do more for your community and for your citizens. So we would appreciate that additional contribution if that is approved by you as the council. Thank you.
Any comments? To the 4,000, everybody in consensus, that's a good thing to do?
I would support the 4,000.
Okay. All right, and then, family crisis centers, ask of 5,000.
I would support that as well.
Okay. Anybody left?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we have consensus on all of those with the increase to the 4,000. So you include those that way. Okay.
What about, we haven't really discussed it, but Trails has requested 10,000 additional dollars from us. That's on the law sheet.
What was that going to be for, you remember?
So that's mine, mainly my fault, partially Angie's. I'm gonna throw her left pinky toe under the tire too, but, we met with the chair of the rec trails a while back to discuss budget. And one of the things we talked about is that for a number of years, we've been taking $15,000 a year out of loss to do trail repairs. Those trail repairs aren't getting any less expensive. They're not building much of a balance, so they really don't have a lot of money to repair, so to speak. So it was just a thought of, if there's extra money or more money available, maybe we could ask for an increase in trail repairs. That's where it come from. At the time, in fact, I didn't realize we were going to be dipping 200 out of reserves. 150,000 out of reserves. But sorry. If you say no, it's not going to end the trail. It's fine. It's just
Because of the floods and stuff like that, it's just normal.
it's just no, every year there's panels that we replace because they're cracked or they get lifted. That's a trip hazard. There's crack sealing on the asphalt portions. And we have this year in the urban renewal budget, we do have overlay of a section included for your guys' consideration. So maybe if you consider that, this doesn't hurt as much if you don't do this. Here I am wheeling and dealing for the trails, making more work for myself. It's maintenance dollars. We'll spend less if you don't approve it. It's not the end of the world.
You know, and
Keep
if
'em
you-
up.
And if you don't do the, if I might, if you don't do all the transfers in July, and you do them, you know, after October when the interest rates adjust, you know, then you've earned at least that much in interest.
Correct, I typically don't
So,
do the transfers
right.
until quite a bit later.
Exactly.
I mean, you have it, we own the trails, you gotta fix them up.
I know, and
'Cause if you don't maintain them,
What's the point?
they'll go downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just short-sighted.
And government,
It only costs more.
government is good for not maintaining stuff.
Let's not be that.
I agree with all that. The thing that I go back to is your initial comment about if there's money there, if there's money, we're talking like this is a tight budget, and there isn't. There isn't going to be money there, and then all of a sudden it is. I mean, and so I'm fine with it, but it just seems like a lot of things we can't to do this, but yet there's money there.
We're dipping into the reserves.
Yeah, I know.
That's accounted for in the reserves, but, I mean, no offense, you're gonna give $25,000 to first, but you're not gonna give Trails an extra 10 to maintain our property, or our property?
And it's
Yeah.
used, it's used.
And you understand, they may or they may not spend $1,000 and the deal fund comes up. What it does do is it puts a little more money in our bank account for a future project, if they do it in the next fiscal. That makes sense?
So it will go with them if they don't spend it?
If she transfers it, if we don't transfer it, it won't.
It stays in city,
Yeah.
it stays in city accounts, right?
Oh, is it because,
In the past, I have directly transferred it to Trails. The 15,000 that's above, that we always include. If, with this being extra, if they don't expend it, not transfer it, if that would be wish.
just, yeah, track, go through their original 15 first.
I think if the departments don't spend it, they don't get it in their account. It just stays in the lost fund, so
Cement pills.
If we can track it, I'd say don't transfer it unless it's needed.
Okay.
Transfer it when they spend their 15 plus, they transfer it.
But if they need it, it's there.
Knowing the trails, they will.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the other departments are.
What?
So, consensus on the 25?
Yes.
All right,
10.
10 additional.
10 additional, yeah.
They're already getting
Right,
10
right,
additional. Okay.
right, so, okay.
Sorry I made that so complicated.
That's all right. So, tonight, counts to my left. I'm going out, counts to my right.
Just want to say thank you to the staff and leadership in the city, putting this budget together and making it as understandable as. And so thank you. The other thing is that I find it a little unfortunate that these people who are debt funds don't show up to talk about it, because I think we've seen already tonight who are in the process. So I don't know if there's any way we can urge them to participate, but I think there's real value for those partners to be present for this.
Agreed.
Did you have anything further? Comments?
No, just a look at Joel. So, we have, our next really important meeting will be, we'll have the hearing in April, on April 2, and in between then we'll have a recap, either the 5th or the 19th.
Okay.
And by the way, I will not be here on April 2, so you'll have to run that without me, but,
Yeah.
I should go.
All right. Todd, anything further from you?
I kind of want one point of clarification. The council is okay with the TIF budget as proposed.
Is there a
Never
reason we
really
shouldn't
walked
be?
through it.
I understand that, we didn't, that's why I'm asking the question. There's $4 million worth of expenditure there.
And is that on Western Avenue?
Some of it.
So let's take a quick trip through item 14B.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
we typically discuss that in,
Did I skip it?
well, you kind of
Yeah, we
breezed
went,
over
we
it.
kind of went from lost to, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
And that's a
man.
hot button, that name word TIF.
Yes, yeah, I didn't realize that either, so
All right, so
back
then,
up.
why don't you open up the attachment that's under item 14B. And then let's just go ahead and
Do you have an attachment?
start at the top. You got the,
Do you have
got
an
the
attachment
bonds.
on there?
See it?
I'm trying to find it.
14B.
14, here we go.
No, there's no attachment
No
on
attachment.
14B.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is on mine.
There's an Excel on a
I don't have it
PDF,
on
There's
which
a
one?
PDF and
Hit your
there's an
refresh
Excel.
otherwise.
PDF Excel,
Are you looking at,
Yeah,
same thing.
You don't have a PDF works?
no,
bring yours down here.
there's
I'll
no blue highlight behind it,
Hmm.
Ken's is the same way.
Did you do bracket, Fred?
They got yours.
Now,
No,
I just moved it, but not touched it there.
I know, you're on the wrong one.
There you go.
Yeah, I found it.
Right.
Okay. Everybody's got 14B.
Yep.
At the top, you have the estimated cash balance of July of this year of 4,182, so we're all kind of all on the same sheet of music.
Yep.
See that number? Okay. And then, you have the estimated income coming in. You have estimated allocations, you have your bond payments, you have your rebates, you have your, just stop me if I'm going too fast, you have Bryan County Economic Development, we just discussed that, that's where that is. SEDC, which is the current amount, 4%, storefront,
quick, O'Brien County,
Yeah,
so it's also $6,000 out of lost
no,
and,
no.
No, I think he developed another sheet that had all the other requests, whether it was TIF or lost.
Right.
And he had you guys discuss them all at one time when
Okay.
you were looking at the lost sheet.
okay,
Yep,
okay,
that's
So
a good
no,
question.
they're not out of both.
okay.
Yep, so SCDC allocation, it goes from 130, I think, to 135.2, 4% increase. Spent, 20,000, which is the same as World, we discussed that. That's the current amount plus World pilot program, it's in there. Blight remediation, this includes, 50% of Stevens' contract, which is half of $33,280. See that? $141,000 is the total line item. And that's what we'll do things like when I have, you know, something that needs to be torn down in the urban renewal zone or things like that. So, NCC, and you've got consultant and professional fees. That item went up, and that would include a couple of things like the park and emergency services strategic planning. Remember, we have both of those in urban renewal plan now. So you have 10 or 15,000 each for some, I just made up the number, but you hire a consultant to help us with that. You have allocation of interest. You have children's water slide replacement, Todd Tabat. You have some aquatic repairs. You have trees. This is mainly a carryover, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then you have the big ones. This is some drainage improvements. West Highway 18, I think they understand Wyman and 16th with the West Highway 18 drainage improvements. You want to talk about that for a minute, please?
Yeah, so that'd be filling in and putting culvert in the ditches from B Street by Morgan Repair, going west to C Street in front of the car wash there, and then also going north and then underneath the road by Larry's Repair. The culverting system underneath the road by Larry's Repair is in very poor condition. The rest of that was brought up as a to clean up the corridor. And then there's also about a block's worth of ditch on the other side of the road by Sheldon Auto we would fill in. And then there's an odd open intake directly to the north of Love Inc. We've cleaned that up as part of this as well. So that's been on the TIF request sheet for a while. We brought it to you as a project because of strategic planning at the west corridor. Do as you so choose.
And I've talked about the rest through the discussion, so I think that's about all I have there.
Sam, where's attorney fees come out?
It would come out of consultant and professional, out of 80,000.
So,
NCC.
so that includes what's for the new rate?
For the new what?
His new rate.
$2.55 an hour.
Oh, no, I mean,
Well, only on TIF projects.
only on TIF projects. I mean, there's a lot of projects that we use ALERs for. Yeah, the urban renewal issues that we can use for, then that would,
So where do the rest of his fees come out of the budget?
General fund.
General fund?
Typically general fund, if it's municipal matters. Otherwise, if it's... for
So does the
example, if it's
budget's
police,
general
if it's-
fund create the 255?
Yes.
yeah, and
It
like
does, for the same amount of, or what's the increase on that because of that? And a question I'm also going to ask is that we had a 3-year commitment the last time, and I don't see that this is a 3-year commitment. It looks to be just a single-year adjustment.
I increased it from 40,000 to 45,000 for general.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, the previous version it went third. That was
210 for 21, 22, and then it went up 220 for 22 all the way through 25.
I can ask Micah what the longevity, what kind of
Yeah,
longevity.
I'd prefer to have the same type of agreement. I mean,
Okay.
the reason we established it that way before is he didn't have to come every year.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
Back to the original question, are we all right with this team?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
June of '26, we'll have $39,821 left as a balance.
In cash, correct?
Is that typically that low over the last number of years?
Just a minute, I'm sorry.
We'll have about 1.5 million in reserves, too.
We're on schedule to have 1 point in cash at the end of this year. I would have to check previous years.
And why 400,000, Ange?
What?
Estimated cash, 7/125, 400,000.
I need that. You're right. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at my estimated balances sheet. Thank you.
$2 million difference, sorry.
Look at my bill! I'll check all those numbers for the next time to recap.
Okay. We done? For now?
You're making me...
Everybody's fine with the TIF budget, so yes, we're ready to move on. Any further comments from you, Angie? You haven't had a chance yet.
No.
Okay. So, I keep coming back, Brad, to your comment about it's easy to spend taxpayer money, and I don't think it is. It's not easy. This has been a grueling process, and every year budget time is grueling. And we put a lot of faith in the three that have been with us here tonight that lay out this budget. I think we do the things that need to be done, and sometimes they cost money. We could cut services, we could, limit things, but I think we've gone through this process, we're all in agreement that this is what we need to do as a community. Is it easy? No, but is it the right thing? I think so. So, did you have a comment?
I just apologize to Angie, because the 400 is the total percentage of cash, the other's in the investments.
Yeah,
That's why it's like that.
take it back.
And sometimes with the budget, we gotta ask tough questions.
I agree.
You might not like the questions I've asked.
No, I
but
think they're good questions.
They
and
gotta be
I think
discussed.
it makes us think.
And down the road, we're gonna have budget discussions.
Because once you add, you never, $2 here, $5 there, to everybody, and then over years that adds up. So, yeah, it is hard.
Yes.
Mistake we've been there for.
But at the end of the day, I think we're doing the right thing. And I think based on the consensus we've had and all these various things, everybody that. Is there questions about, what's going to happen next year? But the budget, we're a long ways on it. And thank you for all, the three of you and your staff for all the work. I see you flipping around in that book, and it's just amazing me how you just find that stuff, and you're on top of it. You're good at what you all are. So my compliment, my thanks to the rest of you council for working through this all. I think we're ready to adjourn. If someone moves, there we go.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Kent.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Hamel.
Aye.
Ostra.
Aye.
Eggers.